and it began 4-1, an individual shall not be eligible to receive a pension unless he, and then at paragraph G says, unless he has savings not exceeding $25,000. So that part of savings not exceeding $25,000 was inserted into the bill. I will be withdrawing the bill that is now before Parliament and bringing back a replacement bill to exclude the reference to savings.
I want to tell you what they're coming to do to you in January. They have laid a bill in the Parliament. It is a bill that has to deal with pensions and public assistance. You know what they're coming to do in that bill? This is what they do. You remember once they boasted about cutting 18,000 food guards? You all remember that? Yeah. And they were so happy and proud to tell you they cut 18,000 people from getting their food cards. And they're coming now to cut your access to pensions and public assistance. Was they taking the 84 how much thousand and whatever pensions and allowances? That bill will make it harder for pensioners and persons getting public assistance to access it, to access those grants. They're monitoring how much money you have in the bank. That's what they're going to do. That's what this bill is telling us. That is so they will have control of your money that you worked for. But the man says, I don't like my money sleeping out. Remember? I want my money. I don't like my money sleeping out. But I tell you, they're monitoring how much money you have in the bank. And if you travel abroad, they're monitoring when you travel abroad. They're monitoring if your children give you any allowance. In the budget, Imbert complained that there are too many pensioners costing too much money annually. In his budget statement, and here comes this bill. Right in December, this bill came. The bill will make it harder for you to access these things and reduce your pension in the new year. That is their new year priority. But their old year priority is what? Raise their salaries, raise their pay and offer everybody else 4%. The Rowley government told people to tighten their belts. These are difficult times ahead. Stop eating macaroni pie. Use the coal pot. Park up your cars. Ride bicycles. Don't even go to the cinema. And then you know what they did? No. They raise their salaries and pensions. Raise their salaries and pensions. And I want to tell you what they're going to do to you. I'm going to do a year in review starting from January, and we are now in December. But as I close off January, I want to tell you what they're coming to do to you in January. They have laid a bill in the Parliament. It is a bill that has to deal with pensions and public assistance. Munila just mentioned about the pensions. You know what they're coming to in that bill? This is what they do. You remember once they boasted about cutting 18,000 food guards? You all remember that? Yeah. And they were so happy and proud to tell you they cut 18,000 people from getting their food cards. And they're coming now to cut your access to pensions and public assistance. Was they taking the 84 how much thousand and whatever pensions and allowances? That bill will make it harder for pensioners and persons getting public assistance to access it, to access those grants. They're monitoring how much money you have in the bank. That's what they're going to do. That's what this bill is telling us. I remember they want to go cashless. They want you to put every cent you have in the bank, remember? Remember? That is so they will have control of your money that you worked for. But the man says, I don't like my money sleeping out. Remember? I want my money. I don't like my money sleeping out. But I tell you, they're monitoring how much money you have in the bank. And if you travel abroad, they're monitoring when you travel abroad. They're monitoring if your children give you any allowance. If they help you with whatever you may have to get and do, it's coming to reduce your pension. That is their priority in 2025. So you really have to wonder where they're coming from. In the budget, Imbert complained that there are too many pensioners costing too much money annually. In his budget statement, and here comes this bill. Right in December, this bill came. So what can you expect in the new year? The bill will make it harder for you to access these things and reduce your pension in the new year. That is their new year priority. But their old year priority is what? Raise their salaries, raise their pay, and offer everybody else 4%. So I just share that with you. This is what the government intends to do with you in the new year.
The government is planning to introduce legislation that will change and, in some cases, disqualify elderly people who reach the age of 65 from accessing the senior citizens' pension. Opposition Leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar is warning citizens. On December 9th, a bill titled the Miscellaneous Provisions, Senior Citizens Pension and Public Assistance, Bill 2024, was laid in Parliament. A major amendment is being proposed in the bill, which disqualifies persons with savings in the bank exceeding $25,000 from accessing the old age pension. Section 4(g) of the bill states, an individual shall not be eligible to receive a pension unless he has savings not exceeding $25,000. Currently, while the submission of bank details is a prerequisite to applying for the senior citizens pension, there is no limit on how much money the applicant has in their accounts, nor does the amount disqualify the applicant from accessing the grant. Speaking at the United National Congress's cottage meeting at its Chaguanas headquarters on Monday night, Persad-Bissessar raised the issue, as she warned, that bill will make it harder for pensioners and persons getting public assistance to access those grants. They are monitoring how much money you have in the bank. That is what they're going to do. That's what this bill is telling us. She told supporters that this was the same government that removed several people from receiving food cards while accepting huge pay raises, recently recommended by the Salaries Review Commission (SRC). However, Social Development and Family Services Minister Donna Cox yesterday defended the bill, which is in her name, saying its purpose is to protect the elderly from abuse and to ensure that those who deserve the pension can access it. Explaining why the $25,000 cap is being proposed, Minister Cox told Guardian Media, "What we have found is that there are many people with a lot of money who transfer all their business and everything out of their hands into their family's hands to collect a pension. So, what we are trying to do is block some of the loopholes where people who are not poor and vulnerable but come and apply for pensions." She added, "The pension is not for abuse, because it's taxpayers' money. This is non-contributory. It is something to help people who are poor and vulnerable. There are many persons who live on their pension because they have never worked in their lives or their children are not taking care of them. Those people are who the pension is for, not for people who have money and still feel they should get the pension." The minister said currently, 109,000 people receive a senior citizens pension. She sought to assure the public that the bill will not impact those who already receive a pension. "We are not going back to check on people to say, we want to see your bank accounts now, you are already getting pension already. It is not that with this new legislation, we are going back to say your mother's supposed to have this or that. No, just moving forward, we are protecting the elderly to make sure all who need it, get it. It is not about taking people off at all, or else we'd have put retroactive in the bill," Cox explained. But Guardian Media challenged the minister on the new amendment, which disqualifies those with over $25,000 in the bank. She was asked if that sum was too little to determine that an applicant is not in need of the monthly $3,500 pension. To this, Cox said, "The point about it is that the pension is for the poor and have people who do not have $1,000 in the bank. That is who the pension is for. Pension is not for people who are receiving money somewhere. If you have a whole set of money in the bank, why do you need a pension? A pension is not intended to totally mine someone. It is assistance, a government pension. Remember, they don't contribute to it at all. It is not an automatic, and that is what people don't understand. There's a process. It has been so for years." She accused the UNC of attempting to sensationalize the issue while ignoring the positives that the bill will bring. Cox said the bill will also empower the state to take action against people who collect pension checks on behalf of the elderly but fail to use the money for its intended purpose. "We have found a lot of elder abuse taking place, and we put in a whole section on that. We have found old people in homes or living by themselves and they are receiving a pension. Who is getting the pension?" she explained. "We realize with people who have dementia, sometimes the family is spending their money, not living there, and not providing proper foodstuff. We recently found a man going through that. But we had no authority to deal with that, so this is giving the authority to be able to protect the older people." The minister underscored that these measures are not being implemented to remove people from the list of recipients, but rather to protect them. Cox could not say when the bill would be debated in Parliament, noting that is up to the Attorney General to decide.
And we are here to address some concerns with regards to the Senior Citizens Pension bill that was laid in the House recently. And I want to give the assurance to our senior citizens that the government has no intention to interfere with the pension of any senior citizen.
Social Development and Family Services Minister Donna Cox yesterday defended the bill. Pension is not for people who are receiving money somewhere. If you have a whole set of money in the bank, why do you need a pension?
In the bill, the eligibility criteria includes income, those who are ordinarily resident, and there was never any requirement with regards to savings. It has always been income-based. No requirement with regards to savings. Unfortunately, it appears such a requirement was introduced into the bill, which was not highlighted in the policy or even in the cabinet note that was approved. And that note was in March 2023. What is in that note? It addressed the question of income criteria, age, and residency. No savings requirement. It so happened that we had cabinet today. We normally have cabinet on a Thursday, but we had cabinet today, and we discussed the note. And at cabinet today, in discussing the note, I wish to affirm that it is not, and it never was, cabinet's intention to affect the savings of our elderly at all. So therefore, we will not be pursuing that part of the bill. So I turn you over to the Attorney General.
Thank you, Minister Cox. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Good afternoon, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Good afternoon, pensioners. As the Minister has outlined very clearly, it is not the intention of the government to pass legislation to impact the savings of pensioners. The cabinet note which first introduced this issue came to the cabinet in March of 2023, and the policy document, because ordinarily cabinet approves the policy coming from the particular ministry which is promoting the legislation, the draft legislation. And the policy document that came on the 3rd of December 2021 from the Ministry of Social Development made it very clear at paragraph 9. The draft policy has been revised, and I'm reading from paragraph 9. The draft policy has been revised to define the term ordinary residence and include such definition in the interpretation section, page 6 of the draft policy refers. Further, guidelines have now been provided in section 4 to assist in the determination of whether a person is ordinarily resident or not. The ministry further proposes that all of the qualification requirements for the senior citizens pension should be contained in one comprehensive section of the Act. And this is the important part of paragraph 9 that I wish to read. As a consequence, the ministry proposes that section 4 should speak to the entire criteria to be satisfied. And I stress the words there, the entire criteria to be satisfied. And those criteria were laid out: 1, age; 2, income; and 3, residential qualification. There was no reference to any criteria either affecting or defining savings. That policy document came to cabinet in March of 2023, and there was nothing in the cabinet note which was addressing this draft policy which spoke to anything to do with savings at all. For a number of different reasons, that note was referred, that cabinet note was referred to the Finance and General Purposes Committee and then to the Legislative Review Committee. It was further considered on other issues. It turns out, as a result of the discussions that we had today and the background research that I did, that someone in the public service during the proceedings of the Legislative Review Committee had introduced an issue to do with savings. And it appears now from looking at the bill that that provision was inserted in the bill. It came back to Cabinet on the 21st of November 2024, and the provision in the bill which deals with savings, Section 6 of the bill said the Principal Act is amended by repealing Section 4 and substituting the following section, and it began 4.1, an individual shall not be eligible to receive a pension unless he, and then the issues of age, qualifications, and residence were repeated, and then at paragraph G says, unless he has savings not exceeding $25,000. So that part of savings not exceeding $25,000 was inserted into the bill. Regrettably, it would not appear that that was addressed at the LRC stage sufficiently to put it before Cabinet, so that when it came before Cabinet on the 21st of November and Cabinet approved the policy which had come back to them with no reference to savings in that Cabinet note, the bill was approved and is now laid in Parliament. I was out of the country on the 21st of November when this bill came to the attention of Parliament. I have looked at it, and out of the discussions that have taken place today in Cabinet, and Cabinet affirming very clearly that it is not and never was the intention of addressing and impacting the savings of any pensioners, I will be withdrawing the bill that is now before Parliament and bringing back a replacement bill to exclude the reference to savings.
Minister Cox. Yeah. Can I come to the chair? Can I wear a speaker? Yeah. If it was included in error, then I would have contacted you yesterday for some explanation behind the rationale why 25,000, which you defended. Why didn't you dispel it then?
Can I take that question before Minister Cox answers? The point is that this having come to my attention and having done the research that informs what I have just said to this media conference today, that informed the considerations that were discussed in Cabinet today, and I had not spoken with Minister Cox yesterday at whatever time you would have called her.
But I think you'll remember my concerns when you called me. I was not well. And I told you that what we were going through with regards to the death of our colleagues, and I would speak to you when I am able to. I think, did you remember that?
Yeah, I remember, but you gave me answer to it, so I had to use that answer. I have to ask, it's part of the reason you're withdrawing it from the bill due to the public's reaction to it, which was not necessarily all up in arms about it. Did that factor into your decision now?
Are you asking me whether I'm withdrawing the bill because of the public reaction, or you're asserting that? Because I didn't say that.
I'm asking you the question.
No, I am withdrawing it because now that I have looked at it carefully and it was brought to my attention by the Cabinet this morning and I did the research, I have satisfied myself that there is an error in the bill and I am going to withdraw it.
Ryan Hamilton Davis, Trinidad Newsday, good afternoon. Now, I'm understanding the whole dynamic as to how these things came about and why the note was put in place and so on. But given the response from the minister yesterday in the Guardian newspaper, there seems to be an existing problem. Is that something that you are looking at, where there are people doing what was suggested? And how does that also add to policy making in the future? Where would we look for preparations for that as well?
Well, you've asked a number of questions there. If I could break it down, I would understand your concern to be, or your question to be, against the background of what Minister Cox and I have said. How does that affect the future in terms of policy and legislation?
Yes, and there's also the question that there's also the issue that the minister raised, where some people are using underhanded means to seem like they don't have the means to so they will become more eligible. And this was put in the public. So is this
Is this actually still, is this a
What-
problem?
All right, so can I speak to that? I mean, I haven't read today's newspapers, and I wasn't present when the minister was speaking, but what I can tell you from the point of view of the cabinet minister and the attorney general at the LRC stage when I had participated, certainly one of the concerns that had been very strongly brought to the attention of the Office of Attorney General and the CPC's department by Minister Cox is that there is a degree of abuse that has been taking place with respect to pensions. So a prime example, and that is one of the three things that the draft policy addressed in the document that I read from, it has to do with residential qualifications. There are persons who are otherwise entitled to pension because they have reached the age, who live outside of Trinidad and Tobago, and are having persons collect pensions on their behalf, even though they don't meet the residential qualifications that entitle them to receive pensions. So one of the things that we've done in the bill that is now before Parliament is to tighten up those qualifications, tighten up the criteria by which you are not allowed to abuse your entitlement to a pension by living abroad, and we've actually worked a formula together under the bill that will come back to Parliament in due course to ensure that we'll have a coordination of the immigration records with the applicant for the pension so that we can satisfy, the minister can satisfy herself as Minister of Social Development, that when someone applies for a pension, they have the records of immigration to satisfy them that that person is not claiming the pension whilst living abroad over an extended period of time. And that's the abuse that I certainly am conscious of, which is an abuse that we certainly intend to address, and I am certain that that's what Minister Cox would have spoken to yesterday.
I just want to add, we have to remember that our main aim is to ensure that the persons who are supposed to receive pension receive it. Because we have persons who really need to be on pension, in need of it, and our main aim is to ensure that they receive it.
Attorney General, it didn't take me long to find that $25,000 amendment. I'm not as versed as you all in probably reading bills. Did you not read the bill before it was laid in Parliament? Is that normal for something like this to happen? Would you not have seen that before it was laid? Attorney General, it didn't take me long to find that $25,000 amendment. I'm not as versed as you all in probably reading bills. Did you not read the bill before it was laid in Parliament? Is that normal for something like this to happen? Would you not have seen that before it was laid?
I read the bill before it was laid in Parliament. I read the bill before it was laid in Parliament. I read the bill before it was laid in Parliament. As I said, when it was brought to Cabinet on the 21st of November in the final draft that went before Cabinet, I was not in the country. Now that it's come to my attention, I'm addressing it.
Is that normal for it to go to Parliament, for it to be laid in Parliament? And you wouldn't have seen what I guess now is the final draft that had that in it.
I did not say I did not see it. I said I read the bill, but at the date at which it went to Cabinet, I was not in the country.
But you would have had someone to fill in for your role, not so? You are appointed an acting Attorney General. Wouldn't the
That's
acting
correct.
Attorney General have to have oversight there?
That's correct. But I'm not pointing any fingers. I take responsibility.
But you would have had someone to fill in for your role, not so? You are appointed an acting Attorney General. Wouldn't the
That's
acting
correct.
Attorney General have to have oversight there?
That's correct. But I'm not pointing any fingers. I take responsibility.
And the public servant you mentioned, what of the public servant going forward?
I take responsibility as Attorney General. And for that reason, I am withdrawing the bill to bring it back with the part that impacts pensioners whose $25,000 savings have been affected. That has been removed.